Imagine you could stand on the surface of the Earth 100 million years ago. You already know what you'd expect to see. A steaming jungle, a swamp under a heavy sky, something enormous moving through the trees, and somewhere in the distance, a roar. Almost none of that would be there. The strangest thing about the age of dinosaurs isn't the dinosaurs. It's everything else. Because the moment you arrived, before you saw a single animal, the world would already be wrong, and the first thing to tell you would be the ground beneath your feet. There would be no grass. Anywhere. No meadow, no lawn, no plain of waving green. For most of the age of dinosaurs, grass simply did not exist on this planet. And that is only the beginning. This is not speculation. It is not artists guessing. We can read this world directly out of the rock, from fossilized pollen buried in ancient soils, from the growth rings inside seashells that lived and died in Cretaceous water, from the microscopic structures that once held the colour inside a feather. This is the story of what Earth actually looked like when dinosaurs ruled it. A planet you would not recognise, and a world that we, for a very long time, got almost entirely wrong. Before we go anywhere, there is one thing you have to understand, because everything else depends on it. The age of dinosaurs was not a place. It was not a single lost world with a single climate and a single cast of animals. It lasted around 165 million years. That number is so large it stops meaning anything, so let me make it real. Everyone knows Stegosaurus, with the plates along its back. Everyone knows Tyrannosaurus Rex. Picture them together, because every film and every toy set has put them together. They never met. They could never have met. More time separates Stegosaurus from Tyrannosaurus than separates Tyrannosaurus from you. Read that again. A T-Rex looking back at a Stegosaurus was looking further into its own deep past than we are when we look back at the T-Rex. Those two animals lived in different worlds, on a differently shaped planet, under different skies. So when we say the age of dinosaurs, we're talking about a span of time in which entire continents drifted apart. Oceans opened, and the map of the Earth was redrawn more than once. There is no single snapshot of it. But there are things that ran through almost all of it. Things that made this a fundamentally different planet from the one you are standing on right now. Let's start by looking up. The sky above the dinosaurs was doing something ours does not. It was moving faster. The Earth's rotation has been gradually slowing for billions of years, dragged on by the pull of the moon, which means that in the deep past our days were shorter, and we can now measure exactly how much shorter, in a way that sounds almost impossible. In 2020, researchers studied a fossilized clam-like shell from the late Cretaceous, from a creature that grew a microscopic layer of shell every single day. By counting those daily layers and matching them against the yearly cycle of the seasons, they could count the number of days in a year 70 million years ago. They found 372. Not 365, 372. The year was the same length, the Earth's orbit hasn't changed much, but the planet was spinning faster, so it fit more days into it. Each day lasted around 23.5 hours, half an hour shorter than yours, every single day, for the entire reign of the dinosaurs. And the moon that was slowing all this down was closer than it is now. Not dramatically closer. This is not a sky filled with a monstrous hanging moon, the way it is sometimes drawn. But it was nearer and larger, and it was still creeping away, the way it continues to creep away today. Now bring your eyes back down to the horizon, because the climate was not what you're picturing either. For long stretches of the age of dinosaurs, the Earth was substantially warmer than it is today, warm enough that for much of that time there were no permanent ice caps at either pole. No Arctic ice sheet. No frozen Antarctica. The temperature difference between the equator and the poles was far gentler than the one we live with. And because so much water was liquid instead of locked up as ice, the oceans stood much higher. High enough to drown the middle of continents. For millions of years in the Cretaceous, a shallow sea ran straight through the heart of North America, splitting the continent into two long islands. Kansas was open water, If you had stood where the Great Plains are now, you would have been looking at waves, and beneath them, marine reptiles that were not dinosaurs at all. So already, the picture is shifting. Higher seas. No polar ice, shorter days. A faster planet. And now let's walk into the forest, because this is where the world becomes genuinely alien. The green of the dinosaur world was not our green. Go back to the early part of the age of dinosaurs and there are no flowering plants. None. No blossom, no fruit, no petals of any kind, anywhere on Earth. And because there is no grass, there is no meadow, no prairie, no savanna, no turf. Take away flowers and grass, and you have removed most of what your eye expects from a landscape. What was there instead were the old lineages, towering conifers, cycads, which look a little like squat palms but aren't related to them at all. Tree ferns. Horsetail standing in dents stands along the water. Ginkgos, a tree that still exists today that you may have walked past on a city street, essentially unchanged. The undergrowth was ferns. Not scattered ferns, the way we know them. Ferns as the ground cover of the world, spreading across the floor of the forest and out into the open where grass would eventually go. The forests would have felt open in a way ours don't, and quiet in a way that's hard to describe, because most of what makes our forests loud had not been invented yet. Then, partway through the Cretaceous, something happened that changed the surface of the planet permanently. Flowers appeared. The flowering plants arrived and spread with remarkable speed, and they brought with them an entirely new relationship with insects, and eventually fruit, and eventually the entire ecosystem you take for granted. Charles Darwin was so troubled by how suddenly they seemed to appear in the fossil record that he called it an abominable mystery. So the later dinosaurs, the famous ones, the ones at the very end, did live in a world with flowers in it. Magnolias, water lilies, colour appearing in a landscape that had never had it. But even they never saw a grassland. Grass existed by the very end, in small quantities. The great grass plains of the world did not arrive until long after the dinosaurs were gone. Which brings us to the animals themselves. And here is where almost everything you have been shown is wrong. Start with the most famous image of all, the roar. There is no... That sound, the one used in every film, is not a dinosaur sound. Roaring is a mammal specialty, produced by anatomy that dinosaurs did not have. Look instead at their living relatives on either side, birds and crocodilians, and you find something else entirely. Many of them use closed-mouth vocalization, sound produced deep in the body and pushed out through the skin of an inflated throat. It doesn't screech. It booms. Low, resonant, felt in the chest more than heard. Think of the sound an ostrich makes, or the deep rumble of an alligator on a spring morning. Some researchers think that's much closer to the truth, and some dinosaurs appear to have been built as instruments. The hadrosaurs, the duck-billed dinosaurs, had elaborate hollow crests on their skulls, tubes of bone connected to their airways. Reconstruct those chambers and blow air through them, and you get deep resonant tones, different for each species, different between young and adult. So the soundtrack of this world may not have been screaming at all. It may have been long, low calls moving through the trees, more like enormous horns than like predators. Now the appearance, and this is the correction that has genuinely rewritten the picture in the last 25 years. Dinosaurs had feathers. Not all of them, and not the way birds do today. But since the discovery of extraordinarily preserved fossils in northeastern China, we now have direct physical evidence of feathers and feather-like filaments across a wide range of dinosaurs, including relatives of the most famous predators. Some are simple hair like fuzz, some are branched. Some are full, complex, modern-looking feathers on animals that could not fly and never would. Which raises an obvious question. If they weren't for flight, what were they for? Insulation for some, brooding eggs for others, and crucially display, which means colour, which means the animals were signalling to each other, showing off, competing, in ways we had assumed were invisible to us forever. Except they aren't invisible. Inside a feather are microscopic structures called melanosomes, which carry pigment. And in exceptional fossils, those structures survive. Their shape corresponds to colour, and by comparing fossil melanosomes to those of living birds, researchers have begun to reconstruct the actual colours of animals that died more than 100 million years ago. We now have small dinosaurs reconstructed with ginger brown colouring and a striped tail, others in black and grey and white with a rust-red crown, an armoured dinosaur reconstructed as reddish-brown on top and pale underneath, a pattern called countershading, which is used by prey animals to flatten their outline against the light. That last detail matters more than it sounds. Countershading on an animal that heavy, that armoured, implies it was still being hunted. It tells you about fear in a creature that weighed more than a car. So the dinosaur world was not grey and brown and monstrous. It was patterned, it was coloured. Parts of it were unmistakably decorative, but there's a question underneath all of this that we haven't asked yet. And it's the one that actually explains why this world existed at all. Why dinosaurs? Out of everything alive on Earth, why did they take the planet and hold it for 165 million years? The answer isn't that they were the biggest or the strongest. At the start, they weren't. The early dinosaurs were modest animals living alongside larger, more successful reptile groups that seemed far more likely to inherit the world. What changed was a catastrophe. At the end of the Triassic period, around 200 million years ago, Earth suffered a mass extinction, one of the great ones, driven by enormous volcanic activity as the supercontinent began tearing itself apart. Vast quantities of gas poured into the atmosphere, the climate lurched, the oceans acidified, and when it was over, most of the dinosaurs' competition was gone. The animals that had been dominant were wiped out or reduced to remnants, and into that emptied world the dinosaurs expanded, not because they had won a fight, but because the field had been cleared. There may also have been something specific about their bodies that helped. Dinosaurs had, and birds still have, a remarkable breathing system, a network of air sacs running through the body and even into hollow spaces inside the bones, which allows air to move through the lungs in a one-way flow rather than in and out. It is significantly more efficient than the system in your chest. If oxygen levels were low during parts of that period, as some evidence suggests, then that lung may have been the quiet advantage that decided who inherited the Earth. And once they had it, they went everywhere. Which leads to the last correction, and maybe the most surprising one. We tend to file dinosaurs as tropical animals, creatures of heat and swamp and jungle, but we have found them inside the Arctic Circle. In Alaska, and in what was then the far south near Antarctica, there are dinosaur fossils in enormous numbers, including young animals, which suggests they weren't just visiting, they were breeding there. Those places were warmer then than they are now. But no amount of warmth changes the tilt of the planet. And the tilt is what creates polar night. Whatever the temperature, those animals lived through months of continuous darkness every single year. Picture that instead of the jungle. A cold forest at high latitude, under snow, in the middle of a winter with no sunrise for weeks, and herds of dinosaurs moving through it in the dark. That is not the animal we were sold. For 165 million years, this world continued. Continents split apart, seas opened and closed, flowers arrived and spread. Whole dynasties of dinosaurs rose, dominated, and were replaced by others again and again over a span of time so long that the animals at the end would have found the animals at the beginning as strange as we find both. And then it ended, in an afternoon, when a mountain of rock struck a shallow sea in what is now Mexico. But even that ending is not what it seems, because one branch of the dinosaur family survived it, small, feathered, beaked, and it is still here. There are more species of birds alive today than species of mammals. You saw dinosaurs today, on a wire, on a roof, walking on the pavement in front of you. The rain never actually ended, it just got quieter and smaller, and we stopped recognizing it. So go back to that moment at the beginning. You standing on the Earth 100 million years ago. The ground beneath you is ferns, and there is no grass anywhere in the world. The forest around you is conifers and cycads and ginkgos, and it is more open than the woods you know. The sun will set half an hour earlier than you expect, because the planet is spinning faster. There is no ice at either pole, and the sea is standing over places you have driven across. Something enormous is moving in the trees, and it is not grey, and it is not scaled, and it does not roar. It calls, low and long, and you feel it more than you hear it. We call that world prehistoric, as though it were a rough draft of ours. But it lasted 165 million years. Ours, the world of grass and ice caps and mammals, has existed for a fraction of that. If one of them could see our planet now, they would be the ones standing in an alien landscape, looking at a world they didn't recognise. They held this Earth for so long, and so completely, that the strange one is us.